Welcome to ASIAL's virtual security industry briefing. I am Daryl Milling, ASIAL's Tasmania convener. To commence our presentation, I welcome John Gellier, ASIAL's president.
Good morning and welcome to this ASIAL industry briefing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Gellier and I'm the recently elected ASIAL president. I've served on the board since 2014 and as the Vice President since 2016. On behalf of the entire ASIAL board, I'd like to welcome you to this industry briefing. Over the next couple of minutes, I'd like to share with you a bit about our core themes and some of our strategies. So firstly, our core themes. At ASIAL, we have two main core themes. One is a safe and secure Australia. And the second, together, each achieves more. These two core themes will central around every discussion that we have and every publication that we do. Because we really want to promote what the private security industry is doing, and we're doing some really great stuff out there to keep our communities safe and to keep our country safe. And together, each achieves more. And if you think about it, in the industry, there's over 150,000 licensed security personnel. We employ with our support staff about 180,000 people, and we contribute about $10 billion to the economy. We're much larger than the police force, we're much larger than the Australian Defence Force. And we're much larger than those two combined. That gives us a strong voice and it gives us a strong foot forward into telling the media and telling the government what we do to keep our great nation safe. We want to promote that, we want to get the message out, and we want to get it out very strongly. Some of our strategies that you'll see, we're going to really have some really great strategies being executed over the next 12 months. First and foremost is a research paper called Security 2025. This is a research paper, the first of its kind. It's going to tell you about the industry, where we are today, where we'll be in 5 years' time, and more importantly, how every member can get to that point in 5 years' time, so we're not falling behind. We have some other great strategies. We really want to promote women in security and how we can get more females into the industry. We want to promote careers in the industry. There's a lot of great people out there, a lot of talented people that have spent their entire working career in the industry. We want to promote that, and we want to promote others to come into the industry through training, through promotions to universities and TAFEs, and through other means. You're going to see some really, really good stuff over the next 12 months. I'm going to keep this very short and sweet. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can contact me through LinkedIn or through ASIAL. Hopefully I can meet everyone after all these lockdowns. So thank you and enjoy this industry briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your presentation and congratulations on your recent appointment. I would like now to introduce Jack Alp and Julian Cartwright from Guardhouse, our sponsors for this virtual briefing.
Good morning, everyone. We're delighted to be the breakfast sponsor for another ASIAL event. We've put a QR code at the bottom of each page so you guys can download a copy of our brochure at any time. For those who don't know us, my name is Jack. I also have Julian with me, and we're both co-founders of Guardhouse. We wanted to give you a little bit of an update today on where we're at as a business and some of the exciting features that we've got coming up. We launched Guardhouse in 2018, and in that time we've now partnered with 112 companies nationally who are publishing over 90,000 shifts a week and collectively have over 38,000 staff. Here's some of our partnered clients.
Our customers love our best-in-class features and workflow on employee scheduling, time and attendance, payroll and invoicing, and instant reporting, along with GPS mobile time clock, automated license checks, offered shifts, skill matching, and our rich customer portal functionality. This results in the benefits of a 62% reduction in time to build rosters and communicate shifts to staff, a 100% reduction in the time it takes to run license checks manually, a 56% reduction in payroll processing time, and a 48% reduction in invoicing generation and distribution time. The companies that choose Guardhouse see an average of 741% return on investment. Plenty of life left in the year, and our development team are working hard to deliver some exciting functionality before the end of 2021. We'll be releasing automated compliance management, labour partner live rosters, pre-shift calls and on-shift welfare checks, and customer portal shift requests.
We're offering those who attended the breakfast this morning a 20% discount on their first year's subscription, and all our contact details are in the QR code when you scan it. Thank you, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Thank you, Jack and Julian. Your offerings and support of our industry is certainly appreciated. I would like now to introduce Brian Takaris, ASIAL CEO, to talk about ASIAL Security 2025, a roadmap to the future report.
At the end of last year, ASIAL commissioned the Australian Security Research Centre to undertake a comprehensive analysis of the threats, challenges and opportunities facing the private security industry in Australia. The result of that study is the Security 2025, a roadmap for the future report. The report acknowledges the vital role the private security industry plays as part of Australia's national security mix, as a force multiplier and a business enabler. The report looks at a range of different issues, from security threats, mega trends, the issue of digitization, labour market challenges, and a range of other issues that the industry needs to consider as it plans for the future. In setting out a clear roadmap for the industry, the report has found out that there's a number of key things that needs to be done, and probably the key takeouts that I'd like to just briefly touch on before I hand over to Gav. And that is a range of activities that the security industry itself needs to undertake as part of the planning for the future. And obviously within that, ASIAL has a key role to play as part of that. There's also a range of key activities and key steps that regulators need to undertake. And of course, end users have a range of initiatives and steps that they need to complete in order to get to where we want to get to. But I think what the single most important message that I'd like to make today is that to build organizational capability and capacity within the private security industry for the future and to meet the future needs of customers depends on a combined approach between industry, regulators, and end users. Together, we will be able to address some of the issues that are affecting the industry and that will be holding the industry back. But in silos, we will not achieve that. So the key takeout before I hand over to Gav, that I'd like everyone, hopefully you will all read the report and digest all that's in there, but is that we need to work together, as I say, government, industry, and end users. So I'll now hand you over to Dr. Gav Schneider, who is the lead researcher for the project.
For those of you who've been following the research process for the Security 2025 project, you'll know that we contacted many of you and asked you to complete surveys. And remember, those surveys looked not just from the provider perspective, we also looked at the consumers and users of private security. We ran workshops, focus groups, and conducted a robust set of interviews. And my colleague, Dr. Paul Johnson, spent a lot of time working through literature. If you have a look at the end of the report, you'll see we looked at 30 plus different documents, research reports, and items of relevance to the study. So I'm very pleased to say that we've produced a product that I think is Australia's largest study into the private security industry. And we've got something, as Brian mentioned, that will hopefully provide a roadmap, not just for users of security or providers of security, but for regulators and other stakeholders to understand the critical role that the private security industry plays in securing Australia. It's not simple, and I urge you please to take the time to read the report. There's going to be the report and a summary of the report. You'll see there's lots of graphics and key takeaways. It's quite a user-friendly document. We will also be presenting and talking about this at the Protective Security and Government Conference, at ASIAL Security Conference in November, and we're running a few podcasts and a few other items. But in essence, the report itself is useless if we don't apply what is in it. So what I'd urge you to be doing when you work through the report is just start to think about those key takeaways you can apply in your own business or the education components you can start driving for your clients, and the combined voice we need to have when looking at trying to enhance and improve regulation. It's not going to be simple, but as Brian mentioned, the key takeaway is that we will not get the security industry that we want and deserve and contribute as effectively as we can to Australia's national security interests unless it is an integrated approach where primarily three parties, the providers, the users, and the regulators, start working together to drive a level of service and performance that is world-class. There are numerous trends, and Brian alluded to a few of them, that need to be taken into account. And whether you work in electronic security, cyber security, or physical security and man guarding, it's quite important that we slowly start the shift to digitization and implementing some of the technology tools and options that are now available even to small-scale providers. If we don't, we are slowly going to find that we are not as competitive as security industries in other countries. We did note that there are resistance to change, challenges with some of these pieces, but these need to be overcome. So in summary, thank you to ASIAL and thank you to all of you who participated and shared your knowledge, insights, and thoughts with us to put the study and the report together. I would say that producing the report is a great milestone, but it only starts the journey. And I urge you, please, to provide feedback to ASIAL or reach out to us if you'd like to know more. But as a parting message, I think we can all start working together at the little pieces we can control and influence to start moving our industry and sector forward now that we have a robust roadmap in place. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you at another event soon.
Thank you, Gav. I'm sure we will see the Security 2025 initiative be the benchmark for the direction of the industry. I would now like to introduce Kerry Lawrence, the Manager of Risk-Based Registration and Licensing, Department of Justice, TAS Government, to provide a regulatory update.
Good morning. My name is Kerry Lawrence and I'm the Manager of Risk-Based Registration and Licensing. Our team administer the Security Investigations Agents Act, the Motor Vehicle Traders Act, the Conveyancing Act, the Registration to Work with Vulnerable People Act, and various orders and regulations. We currently have licensed or registered more than 143,000 Tasmanians across a number of activities. In relation to security, we have 2,136 licensed security employees, and they're licensed to work as commercial employees, crowd controllers, security guards, monitoring room operators and bodyguards. And many are permitted, in addition, to use guard dogs, carry firearms, batons and handcuffs. We have 237 licensed individual agents across the activities that I've mentioned and 69 licensed body corporates. Over the last 12 months, we've issued 603 licenses and 6 licenses were cancelled. In terms of compliance activities or initiatives, the Consumer Building and Occupational Services Compliance and Dispute Resolution team are currently engaging additional resources, and once these resources are on board, they will determine forward plans for our compliance activities. Licence processing times are currently sitting around 8 weeks, which is slightly longer than normal due to delays in processing national criminal history checks. And an update on the automatic mutual recognition scheme. The AMR was agreed to by National Cabinet in December 2020. The goal of the scheme is to promote the freedom of movement of service providers across Australian states and territories by reducing unnecessary regulatory red tape while maintaining high safety standards. The AMR builds on the existing mutual recognition arrangements that have been in place since the early 1990s. Based on advice from the Council on Federal Financial Relations, at National Cabinet in December 2020, government's committed to establishing a widespread uniform scheme for automatic recognition of licensed occupations for the purpose of streamlining processes across jurisdictions to commence from 1 July 2021. At its core, an automatic mutual recognition scheme will provide job mobility. It will help employers access registered skilled workers more quickly and at a lower cost by more seamlessly allowing employees to move where they are most needed. In terms of implementation, the Commonwealth Mutual Recognition Amendment Act commenced 1 July. The ACT, Northern Territory, New South Wales and Victoria have now commenced operation of the scheme, but only for a very limited range of occupations. The agency broadly responsible for implementation of the scheme in Tasmania is the Department of Treasury and Finance. A Mutual Recognition Amendment Bill 2021 has been introduced into the Tasmanian Parliament. It will adopt the amendments of the Commonwealth Act. Consumer Building and Occupational Services is working on drafting amendments of those licensing acts, including of the Security and Investigations Agents Act. Those amendments will not be considered by Parliament until next year. The AMR system will not start in Tasmania until the Tasmanian Mutual Recognition Amendment Bill 2021 has commenced, and amendments to various Tasmanian licensing acts have commenced. Implementation will be rolled out for certain occupations at different times. 89 types of occupational licences administered by CBOS are considered to be within scope of the scheme. They include the Security and Investigations Agents and employees licensed by CBOS. The Administrator of Occupational Licensing has written to the Commissioner of Police regarding introduction of the automatic mutual recognition scheme and possible effects on licensing under the Security Investigations Agents Act. Some unclear issues include whether mandatory finger and palm prints and character reports can be required from persons from interstate, and whether interstate licences should be issued with a Tasmanian licence card.
Thank you, Kerry. It's always great to have your input. I would now like to introduce Cara Pritchard and Leanne Rayner of MAS National to present on technical training funding.
Hi, my name's Cara Pritchard and I'm from MAS National in South Australia, and today I'm joined by my lovely colleague Leanne Rayner, who's from our Victorian team. We're going to talk all things apprenticeships and traineeships, but we're also going to share with you some really exciting news on a subsidy called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement Wage Subsidy. Over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Cara. So who are MAS National and who are we? MAS National is an Australian apprenticeship support network provider, which is a mouthful. We've been delivering apprenticeship support services for 23 years, and that includes promoting training and employment pathways. So our organisation works to support industry through workforce development, and we support schools and community groups, job seekers, career changers and school leavers into meaningful employment. So the most common question we get, Cara, as you know, is what is an apprenticeship or a traineeship? So an Australian apprenticeship, which is a common phrase, it's an Australian apprenticeship is an apprenticeship or traineeship, which is a learning pathway that combines paid on-the-job training with formal study through a registered training organisation. So basically, earn as you learn. By completing an apprenticeship or traineeship, the learner gains a nationally recognised qualification as well.
You're absolutely right, Leanne. We do get asked that question all the time. And the good news is we are here to work with you to help you understand which apprenticeships and traineeships are actually available in your sector. So what are the benefits of apprenticeships and traineeships? Well, from the employer's point of view, there is funding that's available, and that is funding that we're going to go into a bit more detail about in this recording. But there is also state government initiatives that will be specific to your business. So we can actually work with you to help you understand those. That could be things like payroll tax and other incentives that are happening in particular states. It also leads to improved productivity. So if a staff member has been trained properly, they are able to undertake their work and you will see benefits of that training in their daily work. It also leads to increased staff retention, and trained employees quite often meet legislative requirements of industry. So lots of different industries will have certain requirements where training has to be done to a certain level, and you can actually attain those, meet those levels by undertaking apprenticeships or traineeships. There are also benefits for both the apprentice or trainee. They can gain relevant training for their job role. As Leanne mentioned earlier, they achieve a nationally recognised qualification. They earn while they learn, and it does increase their loyalty because they can feel that they're being invested in as part of your business.
Absolutely, Cara. So funding, and this is one of our other common questions that we receive and something that we love to talk about. So funding for trainees and apprentices, what incentives are available to those who undertake a traineeship or an apprenticeship? So potential standard incentives. So these are the incentives that have been around all the time or have been around for years. Obviously, there's eligibility criteria, but the basics are that there's a commencement incentive, which is paid at the 6-month point, and that's around $1,500. The completion incentive, which is paid on successful completion of the traineeship or apprenticeship, which is $2,500. And as you mentioned before, Cara, there's also extra state funding as well. But in terms of the federal funding, there's also extra funding available for employers who take on school-based apprentices or trainees, or for those undertaking a qualification that's on the National Skills Shortage list. And that could also be up to an additional $4,000. So you could have your $4,000 commencement and completion and an additional $4,000 for somebody undertaking an NSNL qualification for supporting adult apprentices as well. So anyone over 21. So that's an extra incentive also.
And we can work with you to help you understand which qualifications are on that National Skills Needs list, because there are some qualifications that are relevant to your industry there.
Absolutely.
Now, without further ado, a bit of information around the boosting apprenticeship commencements. So as we all know, COVID has continued to be a challenge here in Australia and obviously a challenge in some of the states that we work in at the moment. So out of that, the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements Wage Subsidy was generated, and it is a subsidy that provides extra support to employers who engage new apprentices and trainees, and the support is in the form of a 12-month wage subsidy capped at $28,000 per eligible apprentice or trainee. So that it is actually per, so you could potentially take on 10 new apprentices or trainees and actually attract the subsidy for all of them. It is available to all new workers who meet primary eligibility, and we'll take you through a bit of information on that as we go through this slideshow. It also is available to existing workers who are on the trades list, and again, we'll work with you so you understand who that is specifically, or existing workers who have transitioned from casual to part-time or full-time, or from part-time to full-time to undertake the apprenticeship or traineeship. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but we will actually work through with you individually to help you understand who that is that falls into those categories. So
yeah, you're
over
right,
to you,
Cara.
Leanne.
Thanks. And I think in addition to that, I mean, this COVID incentive or the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy is all about getting people into work or creating more permanent positions. So converting those people from casual into permanent part-time or permanent full-time positions. So
absolutely, the government are happy to support the fact that employers are actually able to provide those opportunities to the individuals, and then in return the government want to support them through that process.
Agreed. So the wage subsidy, and am I eligible, which is a common question. What is that primary eligibility that you spoke about before? So for an employer to be eligible for the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement Wage Subsidy, the apprentice or trainee must be undertaking a Certificate 2 or higher qualification, which, as you mentioned, we can go through in more detail. And they must meet that primary eligibility. So they've either got to be a citizen, an Australian citizen or permanent resident, or a New Zealand passport holder who's been in the country for 6 months or longer. They must have appropriate employment and training arrangements that we mentioned before. And if they're an existing worker, they must meet that existing worker criteria that we mentioned just on the earlier slide. They also need to have a training contract that's formally approved by the state training authority in their state, but that's the part that we assist with. So we get that training contract done, and once it's submitted and approved, then you're hunky-dory.
So really, we're here to support you through that whole process. Now, what is classified as a new worker? So in the government's eyes for this particular program, a new worker is someone who's worked for the business less than 3 months full-time or less than 12 months part-time or casual. So there is a fairly large window there, and we can sit down with you and look at your full workforce development piece and work out who those new workers are and make sure that there is an opportunity to maximise the subsidy for them. An existing worker is someone who's been with the current employer for more than 3 months full-time or more than 12 months part-time. But as we mentioned before, there are opportunities to transition people from casual to part-time or full-time, or from part-time to full-time. And what kind of qualifications can be done through an apprenticeship or traineeship? Well, you can actually undertake a Certificate 2 through to advanced advanced diploma qualifications. And I think a lot of the time people think apprenticeships and traineeships are entry-level qualifications and qualifications that aren't at that higher level, but there are so many different, I think it's over 500 qualifications that are available. So we can work through that with you. And in your industry, there are potential qualifications in the ICT, security, the cabling. There are also business certificates, because there are people who would be working in the offices or working in the back end to support you. And there are also leadership qualifications that are available. So we haven't actually listed all of the qualifications because there are so many of them, but we can work with you individually to work out what the appropriate qualification is for your business.
You're absolutely right, Cara. And I think it's important to note that when we talk about apprenticeships and traineeships, everyone thinks about those traditional trade apprenticeships that are available, and everybody knows those trades. But it equally applies to traineeships, where it could be basically any job that you think of, there could be a traineeship connected to that.
Absolutely.
So is my business eligible for the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement, or I'm going to call it back from now on? It's a mouthful.
Much easier.
Yeah, all businesses are eligible regardless of their size, income or geographic location. To be eligible, you need to engage an Australian apprentice or trainee anytime between the 5th of October 2020, so last year, and the 31st of March 2022. So that 12 months starts whenever your start date of your traineeship or apprenticeships commences. And your Australian apprentice or trainee needs to be undertaking that certificate 2 or higher qualification and have a training contract that's fully approved or formally approved by the relevant state training authority. And as Cara mentioned before, we'll support you through this whole process. So if you have somebody that you're just not sure about whether they're eligible or not, or you've got a whole group of people whether you're not sure, or you're wanting to take someone on, we'll actually work with you to give you some sort of indication of what you may be eligible for.
So I guess this is a pretty important one. How much is the subsidy? Well, as we mentioned earlier, it is up to $28,000. So the wage subsidy is 50% of the Australian apprentice or trainee's gross wage paid, capped at $7,000 a quarter. So there'll be 4 different quarters, and in each of them, there is up to the $7,000 that can be claimed back. The wage subsidy is available for wages paid in a 12-month period from the commencement date, which Leanne alluded to earlier. When will the payments be made? A very common question we get asked. So as I said, they are paid quarterly in arrears, and they are directly into the employer's nominated bank account. So MAS do administer this process. We send out a claim form. We ask you to fill out the claim form and attach the wage evidence for that period of time. And then we go through and pay the claim, which I think I've just answered my next question before I even got to it. Over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Cara. And just to remember, something to remember is that this Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy is in addition to those standard incentives that we mentioned before. So it could be $28,000 wage subsidy plus the $4,000 standard incentives and plus any extra incentives that may be available through the federal government, plus any state government incentives that might be available as well. So are there any specific exclusions for back? So an employer will not be paid back or the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy where the employer is receiving any other form of Australian government wage subsidy or equivalent for that apprentice or trainee, or that the Australian apprentice or trainee is undertaking a qualification that they've already done before, basically. So even if it's an upgrade of the same qualification, they won't be able to attract the back. So long as they're doing something new, that's all fine. And then what if your apprentice or trainee cancels or suspends through the claim period? That's fine. All you need to do is let us know, and you get paid up until that date where they've cancelled. Or if they're suspended, you can pick up that payment again once they're back and working with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. Well, that brings us to the end and really what's next. So our team, as we've mentioned throughout the entire recording, we're here to support you through the process. We have staff members all across Australia who are out in their cars, available to pop into your business and sit down with you and learn about your business and learn about what your needs are, and then work out what the best workforce development plan is for you that aligns to apprenticeships and traineeships, so you're able to maximise the opportunities that are available. You'll see on the next slide mine and Leanne's details. You're more than welcome to contact us directly. We can link you with the appropriate people, and we will be online to answer your questions. So We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Cara and Leanne. As an industry, we need to get our heads around funding options and how we can use those options for the benefit of all. I would now like to introduce Brian DeCaris, ASIAL CEO, to provide a security industry update.
Thank you all for your participation this morning. I just wanted to take a few minutes to run through a few industry issues that have happened over recent months. As you will have seen over the last few weeks, we've circulated a copy of the 2021 ASIAL Annual and Financial Report through First Alert and other channels. The past year, whilst it's been a difficult one for the industry and for ASIAL itself, we've managed to perform particularly well this last year, and we saw some positive signs within our membership. If you look at some of the reports and charts that are contained within the report, we saw membership growth of 4.25%, and we saw strong member engagement, which is shown by the illustration on the right, which shows the use of the ASIAL website, the amount of email notifications that were sent out to members. So engagement and membership growth was very strong for the past year, which is very encouraging. Similarly, we've run a number of different campaigns and different issues that have arisen over the last year. We reached about an audience of around a total audience reach potential of just under 60 million. We continue to see a strong growth in our social media platforms in terms of followers, and we've also seen significant membership, not only membership engagement, but media engagement. So we've had 120 media mentions compared with 73 in the year before. Financially was also a very positive year with a surplus, an operating surplus of just over about $110,000. We also had a revaluation of the Security Industry House, which was purchased back in 2009, which saw an additional revaluation of the building, which has seen the reserves of the association continue to rise. The good news is the association's in good hands and in a sound financial position. Over the recent weeks, we've also been calling on members to promote vaccination within their workforce. It's an important thing as we go through this race to get to the roadmap out of the lockdown. We're seeing some encouraging signs in some states. So what I'd encourage you to do is have a look at the materials that we've sent out. There are a number of tools that are available to help you promote vaccination within your workforce. So if you need any help, please give us a call and we'll be happy to help you. In July, we celebrated International Security Officers Day, the 5th annual event that we've actually had this day. Through ASIAL's involvement and those of the industry participants, we've reached an audience of over 30 million through editorial features in a range of newspapers, radio, as well as social media, not just here in Australia, but around the world. And the following slide just shows some of the pictures and some of the photos. We were delighted to have Nick Caldas as the patron for the event this year. We even got support from the Home Affairs Minister, who posted to social media on the day. We will start work in the coming months for the 2022 event. So if you didn't participate this year, please get on board next year and have a role to play as part of promoting the day and promoting the role that private security officers play around, not just Australia, but around the world. The Security 2021 event, unfortunately, the event scheduled to be held as a face-to-face event at the end of November has had to be converted to a virtual event, but we will continue with the ASIAL conference program with all, if not most of the speakers that were confirmed to do the face-to-face program. It is an impressive lineup. Some of the speakers are featured here. If you haven't seen the program, please go online to the ASIAL website. You will be able to see who the speakers are, the topics, but one of the key themes, and it's one of the themes that you will notice in the Security 2025 report, which was issued last week, is that the issue of digitization, digital transformation, the use of artificial intelligence and technology will be key themes running through our industry over the coming years. So please have a look at the conference, get involved. It's a very full-on program, but I think you will find it very enlightening and very helpful in terms of planning for the future. Another upcoming event, which unfortunately has had to be changed to a virtual event, is the 2021 Awards for Excellence. So this year's program, as always, will feature the ASIAL Awards, the Outstanding Security Performance Awards, and the Australian Security Medals Foundation Awards. The awards will be announced on the 27th of October. Registrations for the event are now open, and they are free. So please, if you haven't already done so, please go online at the website address there, or you can email us at Security@ASIAL to get a link to the registration page. But please register. It promises to be a very an interesting evening, and some very worthwhile recipients will be announced. Another activity that's happened since we were able to last meet was the announcement of the delayed ASIAL board elections, whereby John Galell was elected as the new president of ASIAL, and Rachel Saunders as the vice president, and the other 6 directors as listed there were elected. Over the coming months and year, hopefully we'll get a chance for you to meet face to face with our new board. But again, if you haven't had a look at the ASIAL website, there's information there about the directors in the annual report profile. So please have a look at that. Another issue which has been bubbling along over the last 12 to 18 months is the issue of insurance for not just the private security industry, but for many other industry sectors. ASIAL made a submission in June to the Insurance Council of Australia's strategic review of the availability and affordability of insurance cover. And as a result of that submission, we have been invited to participate in a project to look at how we can make insurance more affordable and available to a broad range of industries, not just security, but certainly security. There are a number of different areas that that working group will look at, but certainly one which is becoming increasingly of interest and concern to the industry is the issue of COVID insurance, where a growing number of insurers are having exclusions for COVID cover. So that will be an issue that we will look to address. You will have noticed over the last couple of months that there was a public comment document issued for the AS 2201 intruder alarm standard. That comment period is now closed, and the final amendments will be made to the standard, which will hopefully be available either later this year or early next year. There is currently a public comment draft out for security detection dogs, which closes on the 11th of October. Again, if you're interested in that, that's a link to the document is on the ASIAL website. But if you have any comments on that, please ensure you get your comments into the Standards Australia portal by the 11th of October. Finally, the ASIAL podcast series continues with the latest 2 podcasts look at crisis and issues management in a post-COVID world and developing a convergent security strategy to protect an organization. Both of the podcasts involve speakers who will be speaking at the Security 2021 conference in November. So again, I encourage you to have a look at those podcasts. There are a back catalogue of podcasts that we have put out, and we will be putting an additional vodcast, which will be coming out late next week on the Security 2025 report, which will include a range of different perspectives, and that will analyse some of the issues that are raised in the report and what that actually means for the industry. So I would encourage you to keep an eye open for these podcasts and the vodcasts that they put out there to help you make some decisions and understand what's happening in our industry. So that brings me to an end.
Thank you, Brian. I would like to now introduce Chris Delaney, ASIAL's Industrial Relation Advisor, to provide an IR industry update.
Hello, I'm Chris Delaney, ASIAL's Workplace Relations Advisor. Lots happening in the industrial landscape, and much of it seems to be driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. Employers have a lot of questions, a lot of very difficult questions to deal with. And often, unfortunately, those questions don't have simple black and white answers. The question we are asked most is, can an employer direct an employee to have a vaccination against COVID-19? The short answer, of course, is yes. But with a lot of these things, there is a caveat. Any direction you give to an employee must be lawful and reasonable. And in the context of the COVID-19 vaccinations, the criteria for determining what is lawful and reasonable will fall into one of two areas. It'll either be a government public health order, or as a result of the work health and safety legislation, specifically Section 19 of the Work Health and Safety Act, which has in most states harmonised legislation. Now, state governments have in some limited instances issued public health orders restricting unvaccinated workers from entering or leaving LGAs of concern to attend work. Or in some instances, only allowing authorised workers who have had at least one vaccination to work in authorised workplaces. So only in very limited circumstances will employers have the right to direct employees to have the COVID-19 vaccination, or for that matter, the flu vaccination. For an employer to reach the point where they could be satisfied that the direction to vaccinate would be lawful and reasonable, in my opinion, it would be necessary to conduct a risk assessment of the work, where the work is performed, and the available PPE and risk mitigation factors. The Fair Work Ombudsman has provided a worthwhile profile of what might be considered 4 tiers of risk. We recommend that members visit the Fair Work Ombudsman's website and have a look at that. In a risk assessment, you'll need to consider the following questions. Does the employee work with people who would be vulnerable to COVID-19 and experience serious health issues? Does the employee work in a high-risk area, for instance, hotels, hotel quarantine, airlines, that sort of thing? Is the vaccination essential for the performance of the work? Is there a genuine reason why the employee may refuse to have the vaccination? How will a refusal affect the work health and safety responsibilities of the employer towards other employees or towards the community? Are there opportunities to redeploy an employee who refuses to be vaccinated in order to alleviate those safety issues? Now, ASIAL doesn't recommend that employers give directions to employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19 without having first sought sound professional advice. We will soon have a webinar to deal with the other COVID-related questions. Can I make vaccination a condition of employment? When we return to work, can I insist that only vaccinated employees can come back to work? What can I do if the customer will only have fully vaccinated security at the workplace? And should I have a return to work plan? Now, those issues will be discussed at a later date, and we encourage you to contact us if you need to know the answers. But just quickly on casual conversion, on the 27th of September, employers other than small businesses were obliged to offer eligible casuals conversion to permanent employment if the casual has been employed by the employer for 12 months and during the last 6 months has worked a regular pattern of hours on an ongoing basis, which, without significant adjustment, the employee could continue to work as a full-time or part-time employee. Now, if you haven't commenced that exercise, you should do so. If you need help or advice on that, or any other workplace issue, you can contact me, ir@asial.com.au, and thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and for your industry advice and members' support. That is certainly valued. Thank you to all our speakers. We will now have a Q&A.
But it's just in relation to whether Guardhouse have integrate with the MYOB And previously, in relation to when Jack's been asked these sort of questions, their system does integrate with MYOB and other systems. And one of the things about Guardhouse system is that it's capable of actually integrating with many different things. And also Guardhouse are able to actually take on board requests for what the system should be doing. And it's one of those areas that Guardhouse are very happy to assist with. And some of the areas, if there's enough organisations wanting something with the Guardhouse program, they will introduce a process there. Also, in relation to that, I believe, Julio, you've just a question there, does Guardhouse integrate with Xero? I do believe so. Jack LP was commenting on that, and they were saying that MYOB was a specific question previously, and they do actually integrate with others. So that's certainly hope there. But from your point of view, if you have any questions like that, either come back to us at ASIAL or go direct to Guardhouse. And if you haven't got Jack's contact details, because they're on the screen, please come back to us and we'll assist there. In relation to the other one, there was one other area that come through on Guardhouse. They do have some new programs that they're introducing, and Jack and Julian indicated on their presentation, and they should all be in and online in the Guardhouse program before the end of the year. Just in relation to that, Kerry, a question for you in relation to what month next year do you expect AMR to be in place?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We need to provide further information about that. The information to date is that the amendment bill, that it won't start in Tasmania until the amendment bill has commenced. So we will certainly update members, and our website will be updated around that time.
All right.
Multiple occupations that we at CBOS are involved in licensing. So, and there's also other occupations across government that are involved with licensing. So until such time as the amendment bill comes out, then we'll be actually looking at what licensed occupations go, I guess, first.
Yeah. Just in relation to that, and it's a good point with AMR, and Kerry, you indicated that Northern Territory, New South Wales, Victoria and the ACT have introduced AMR. But we must remember that there's only one jurisdiction that's covered AMR in security, and that's been the Northern Territory. So anyone at the moment can actually have AMR or have their security license, go and work in the Northern Territory job by just the registration. So that's a process. But New South Wales, Victoria and the ACT have delayed that for 12 months. I know it's probably outside our pay grades at the moment, Kerry, and yours, just the thing being is, do we think when Tasmania introduced it, because CBOS have a lot of licensing areas, have some concern about some of the security agents' AMR licensing, do you think Tasmania will also request a delay initially? What's your thoughts there?
I think generally we're going to request a delay for 12 months across all of our licensed occupations, whether that is approved or not. Just to be prepared and make sure that we've got all our systems and processes in place to be able to deal with the automatic mutual recognition. So
yep.
Things like, getting people recorded in our system. So whilst it's automatic mutual recognition, having the ability to be able to have visual oversight in our systems if someone comes from interstate. Other things across all licensed occupations, reissuing cards and the like to people. So I suspect across the board, we'll be looking for the 12-month exemption for all our licensed occupations and then rolling out from there. So after that time, figuring out, what of the licensed occupations may be the easiest or most beneficial to roll out in the first instance, and then flowing on from our other license bases.
Yeah. All right, look, and we really appreciate that. And look, and the industry does understand that regulators do have some concerns and still want transparency of who's working in the security industry in your jurisdiction. So we really do understand that, and we sort of encourage continued engagement. Speaking of engagement, and Kerry, I've had the conversation with you, in relation to the Agents License Act, what are we looking at for the amendment of the Act? Have we got any timeline on that yet, or it hasn't come to your table? It's going to get a run in 2022. What are your thoughts there?
Well, Kyra would know more, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine 2022 will be the time frame.
But I suspect it'll maybe get a run at the time when we are looking to roll out the AMR, because that'll be the opportune time to make any changes as well to each of the licence frameworks.
Yeah, and again, and from an industry point of view and from an ASIAL point of view, we're going to be trying to be actively involved with you in relation to that, and also with your government to try to see what changes may take place. And also, every time we see legislative change take place, we want to see the better harmonisation of national positions. So we're all got a similar place. So that'll be great to look forward to that. Julian had a question in relation to monitoring centre training. Now I know, and this is something that we need, and it's probably a little bit without notice as well, and I don't expect an answer from you, Kerry, but monitoring centre training, many years ago, training was removed from monitoring centre training. When the review of the training package came back in, Tasmania reintroduced it on your system for training, and in actual fact, everywhere else in Australia now, there is no training required for monitoring centre operators. We as an industry encouraged that and supported that at the time, because monitoring centres are not on anyone's site, but monitoring centres were people with disabilities were able to work, but they couldn't pass the normal security training. So normal security training licensing was really not appropriate. So down the track, and Julian's question is that we probably need to have some discussions with you in relation to that, because organisations do struggle to find suitable staff at times. So maybe it's something we've got some good discussion there, and it may help Julian, and I might, Julio, I might have a chat with Julio down the track and see what that happens. And Julio's got another question in relation to your ID cards. Now, I know in Victoria, I think they still get their ID cards printed in Western Australia. The ID cards for Tasmania, do we know, we have got an idea of, are they printed locally or they go offshore as well?
They're printed in Victoria.
Oh, well, I wonder why Victoria can't get theirs printed in Victoria, but they said there's the Western Australia. It's a confusing area, but hopefully we can get an answer on that one too. Just in relation to the monitoring centre we've done, Julia's got one other. Now, this is for Maz, and I do thanks, Kerry, and that for your assistance there. And I guess from that point of view, Maz, that supportive workers, however, I'm finding a lot of the personnel I've put through the traineeships are ineligible when it comes to submitting activities to be added to their licence. So I guess that's not quite sure in relation to that. I'll have to have a look at that again in relation to that. Some of the training, and I guess, Leanne, the training that you talked about under what's available under the traineeships and apprenticeships, naturally that's not all licence associated, but it's actually for the benefit of the individual and the organisation. It can or may not have impact upon a licence category.
Absolutely, Peter, and you're right. Although there's trades essentially come under the apprenticeship program and non-trades generally under the traineeship program, it really depends on the actual qualification and what's included in that qualification, which generally that sort of comes from industry anyway. And I think Julio is right. Sometimes those licenses are excluded from the traineeship program, but it depends how the qualification's been set up initially. But for traineeships in general, there's funding available. And I think if you speak with your training organisation, they may be able to add some particular units in if they're really required for your particular qualification or your particular employee.
Yeah, I think, Leanne, I think you hit it on the head. It's the conversation with the RTO, because from a Maz National point of view, you assist and facilitate that process, but the RTO is still delivering the training in relation to the traineeship. Now, if an organisation needs to have training associated with a licence activity, it's important they have an RTO that has that training on their scope of registration to enable that licence category to be recognised. So it's something with the RTO.
Absolutely agree. And if you speak with your RTO, you can actually negotiate that training plan. So you don't take something off the shelf if it doesn't suit your employee or your situation, your job role. It needs to be negotiated with your training organisation, and they're open to that also.
Yeah, and that's the flexibility that RTOs can offer, so long as they maintain the appropriate units that are required for licensing purposes. You can't just avoid that. Which is another one in relation to Maz. You talk about apprenticeships and traineeships, and in our security industry, we don't have a lot of apprenticeships. There's some technical areas that can capture apprentices, but really it's traineeships. But in actual fact, those words are interchangeable in your process. So we have the opportunity in the security industry to have traineeships, and that could be for security or other activities.
Yeah, agreed, Peter. And I think the government lumps everyone under Australian apprenticeships as the overall phrase or the overreaching phrase, but really we still refer to them as apprentices and trainees. And apprentices, as we say, are trade, and traineeships are non-trade and can cover things like reception, admin, finance, IT, HR, call centres, so any of those areas that you think of that are non-trade, there's about 500 different qualifications that we can look at for industries, as you say, not just apprenticeships, which could include cabling as well, which is one of those quals.
Yeah, so that's important from that point of view. And I think from our industry point of view, we probably don't take advantage of, I know it's a bit crass, but the bucket of money that's available, that's why we should be talking to groups like yourself to find out what we are really entitled to.
Absolutely agree. And Peter, my phrase is you train these staff anyway. Every person that you put on in your business, you're training them anyway. This way you can get some funding for it and the person can actually get a qualification for the training that they're doing.
And it's important to speak with yourselves in relation to, is a person eligible? Because there are some criteria, and that means that if a person's got a diploma, they may not be entitled to the Certificate 2 training, but if they've got a Certificate 3, they may be entitled to a Certificate 4 training or diploma training. So there's some criteria there, and that's really something that you can guide people on.
Absolutely. And you're right, that applies to the standard incentives, but even with the new boosting apprenticeship commencement funding, some of those eligibility criteria that have been around for a long time don't apply anymore.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I would just encourage, like, you operate out of Victoria, but you've got people on the ground in Tasmania that can certainly assist any organisation that wants to discuss this.
Absolutely. We've got a very experienced team in Tassie, so happy to chat.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, Chris, there's one in relation that comes up all the time in relation to casuals, but you've covered casuals a fair bit in regard to their entitlements and what have you. But in this casual conversion, it's not as though we're getting rid of casuals. We still have a right for casuals. How is an organisation going to continue in engaging casuals? That's still an option.
Oh, certainly, Pete. The issue around casual conversion is whether or not the employee has worked regularly and systematically, at least in the last 6 months. So, and if that will continue, if it's likely to continue. So those people are really eligible to become full-time or part-time employees, depending on the number of hours that they've been working over that period of time. But there's still a role, an opportunity to put on a casual. And the legislation says that a casual is a person who is engaged as a casual, who's signed a contract of employment that offers casual employment without any guarantee of continued employment or of a particular number of hours or days, and that they accept that arrangement. So offer an acceptance at the employment stage. I'm offered work as a casual. I accept work as a casual. I understand that I'm not guaranteed any minimum number of hours or days or whatever, and that means you are a casual. So regardless of what happens after that, according to the new federal legislation, regardless of what happens after that, the offer and acceptance is as a casual. Now, for current people, casual conversion is an option based on what I said earlier. but a casual gets a 25% loading, and that is in lieu of any paid leave. So a casual doesn't accrue paid leave, sick leave, or annual leave. All right. There are provisions for casuals in each state to get long service leave over a period of time, but that's an entirely different matter.
Okay, so it really comes down to it. It's so important to have that agreement in place, that employment agreement that covers that casual, and that's when members should come to you to seek advice on that employment agreement to make sure they're covered and suitably covered, so they don't actually place themselves at risk.
Yeah, we've got template contracts for casuals, part-timers, full-timers, for all levels of employee across the security network. So security guards as well as techs and so on.
Yep.
Admin.
All right, very good. Thanks, Chris. And George, apologise. The monitoring question was from yourself, so do go. Then another one from Matt in relation to licensing in monitoring, and this one probably in relation to Kerry. If I provide monitoring to a client via a third party, am I required to have a monitoring room operator on my license? I think from a national point of view, yes, that always is the case because you're the one contracting that monitoring with a client, but it does vary. So Kerry, you might be able to just place some clarification on that for Matt. They provide monitoring by a third party for a client. Do they need to have monitoring room on their license?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Peter. Absolutely, I think they do. But I will, I've been out of the loop for about 12 months and I've just returned to a risk-based licensing. So I would say yes, but I'd like to just get back to Matt potentially and just confirm that.
That's all right, fantastic. And the position we take, because some of these things right around Australia have variations and confusing. The baseline is that who's got the contract with the client? And if you've got the contract with the client, you're providing the service. Even though you might put that service out to a third party, you're the one that's contracting. And in the eyes of a relationship, potentially you've got that relationship with the client, even though provided by a third party. So thanks, Kerry, and we can clarify that. Yeah. It's really good. I think in relation to the Security 2025, Brian, we've got a lot of opportunities, even with some of the areas we've covered today and the questions. You know, where do you see Security 2025 helping our industry going forward?
Well, I think what's very clear from the report is that there's obviously a lot of challenges that we all face, but there are probably three key parties to the solution, to the road ahead. One is obviously the industry, and bodies like us have a role to play. The other is the users of security have a role to play, and obviously regulators have a significant role to play. So I think the challenge for us as ASIAL is to help facilitate that journey by getting the different parties together and actually coming up with solutions that are meaningful and actually address some of the issues that the industry has faced for many years, and actually get to the point where we have a much better respected industry, more professional industry, and actually the industry continues to grow, which it is growing every year. So I think it gives us a clear map, a roadmap of where we need to get to. But ASIAL cannot do it on its own. It needs all the other parties to get involved.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Brian. And I was going to ask Daryl, I think Daryl's dropped off, is again, Tasmania is like every other jurisdiction. We're struggling to find people for the security industry. And I don't think we have any easy answers, but I guess from the others online in relation to Matt and George and Julio in particular, is that we're still struggling. I don't know, unless any of you members have easy answers for that or some magical pill, but we seem to be struggling to get people into the industry, and I think that'll continue for some time, especially as COVID continues to hit other jurisdictions, although we're really pleased from a Tasmania point of view that there's been significantly business as normal to a lot, except we still struggle for people. And I think, Brian, you're having discussions with government there that some of the quarantine programs in Tasmania had been taking a lot of security staff. We still believe we're finding that from our Tasmanian communication?
Yeah, I think it certainly has been a challenge. I mean, the hotel quarantine program has taken a significant number of security officers out of the normal day-to-day security activities. So I think that will be a challenge moving forward, actually, not just in Tasmania, but in most states and territories, is actually getting the staff that the employers need. So I think it will be an issue. We need to look at ways that we can actually encourage new entrants to the industry. We also need to upskill staff to future-proof the industry as well. So I think training will be a key part, but I think certainly Tasmania and a number of other states are struggling to fill positions, and that will be something which hopefully over the next 3 to 6 months will start to ease off a little bit as hopefully we open up the economy, but time will tell.
Yeah. All right. And it's very interesting from Kerry's statistics. We've got 603 new license applications over 12 months. So that's an interesting point of view. But again, it just reflects that Tasmania is like many other jurisdictions. We have a fairly high churn rate in our security industry, and we've got to try to do something to maintain it. So hopefully Security 2025 can look at that. Hopefully from a Security 2025 point of view, we can look at more harmonisation of legislation, and hopefully we can actually continue to keep people in our industry. And maybe from a NAMAS point of view, we can keep people because we can get people in, we can train people in, and we can get some support funding for that. And that's certainly an advantage there. All right, if no other questions are coming through, I do thank everyone for attending. It certainly is appreciated. Kerry, your time in relation to that, and welcome back into CBOS licensing area. I know Tasmania is like many other jurisdictions. We do have a lot of demands on our licensing area, but we do need good contact, good regular contact, and people that we can actually talk to and have some good history in relation to licensing. Certainly thank in relation to Jack and Julian and the Guardhouse continued sponsorship of ASIAL's presentations. John Galel for presentation and John's new position. Brian, yourself in relation to, again, the overall ASIAL position, which we're doing, I think, a great job in supporting the industry. And Gav's been very good in relation to the Security 2025. Again, Kerry, just to thank you very much from a regulator point of view, certainly great. Chris, your information, again, appreciated. And I just see some communication that come through that people don't realise that some of our HR people in our organisations around Australia actually take counsel from Chris on a regular basis. And it's amazing that in the broader HR area, how specific security is, and certainly people use Chris as counselling. So certainly appreciate that. Daryl, you've dropped off, but thank you very much for your convener role. And we certainly understand that and appreciate the support you provide. So thanks everyone, and stay safe and keep on having a look at the ASIAL website. And also remember that all the documents that Chris and Brian referred to, they aren't always available publicly on the ASIAL website. You're required to go in and log into your member area, and then you have access to all the documents. But remember, and in relation to that, Leanne, thank you very much for your time and some mass support. I know you've been with us on all the presentations around it, but it's an area that we just don't grasp enough and realise that there's great opportunities in training and there's funding available. So do thank you very much. But remember, ASIAL's only a phone call or an email away, and we're there to try to assist. So thanks everyone, and please stay safe.